What had you been doing all morning?
I had been cleaning my room.
Where had he been working?
He had been working in a restaurant.
How long had you been studying English?
I had been studying for 2 months.
Who had been using my phone?
Your brother had been using it.
What had she been cooking?
She had been cooking pasta.
Why had the baby been laughing?
He had been playing with a toy.
How long had you been living in that house?
We had been living there for 5 years.
Had you been sleeping before I called?
Yes, I had been sleeping.
What had the teacher been explaining?
She had been explaining grammar.
Why had you been missing classes?
I had been feeling sick.
Where had he been going every day?
He had been going to the library.
How long had she been working there?
She had been working there for 6 months.
Had you been practicing for the test?
Yes, I had been practicing a lot.
Why had they been talking so loudly?
They had been arguing about something.
Who had been using my laptop?
Your friend had been using it.
Had she been writing her essay all night?
Yes, she had been writing since 10 p.m.
What had you been learning in history class?
We had been learning about World War II.
How long had the manager been waiting for us?
He had been waiting for 30 minutes.
Where had they been traveling before coming here?
They had been traveling in Europe.
Why had he been driving so fast?
He had been running late.
Had you been enjoying your trip?
Yes, I had been enjoying it a lot.
What had she been buying at the market?
She had been buying fresh vegetables.
Who had been planning the vacation?
My sister had been planning everything.
How long had you been waiting at the airport?
I had been waiting for 2 hours.
Had it been raining when you left?
Yes, it had been raining heavily.
Where had the train been going?
It had been going to London.
Had the pilot been flying the plane smoothly?
Yes, he had been flying it very well.
What had your parents been doing before dinner?
They had been watching TV.
Why had your brother been calling you?
He had been asking for help.
Who had been helping you with your homework?
My friend had been helping me.
Had your grandmother been feeling better?
Yes, she had been feeling better.
Where had your cousin been staying?
She had been staying at our house.
What had your best friend been saying about me?
He had been saying good things.
Had your sister been practicing her dance?
Yes, she had been practicing every day.
Why had the kids been laughing?
They had been watching a funny video.
How long had your uncle been living abroad?
He had been living abroad for 10 years.
Had you been spending time with your family?
Yes, I had been enjoying time with them.
What had you been painting?
I had been painting a sunset.
Had they been playing football in the park?
Yes, they had been playing for 2 hours.
Why had she been singing loudly?
She had been practicing for a show.
Who had been playing the guitar?
My brother had been playing it.
What had you been watching on TV?
I had been watching a comedy show.
Had you been reading a new book?
Yes, I had been reading a mystery novel.
Where had they been practicing their dance?
They had been practicing in the studio.
Why had the dog been barking so much?
He had been hearing strange noises.
Had you been writing a new story?
Yes, I had been writing something interesting.
What had she been doing in the kitchen?
She had been washing the dishes.
Had you been cleaning the house all morning?
Yes, I had been cleaning since 8 a.m.
Why had he been fixing the car?
It had been making a strange noise.
Where had they been keeping the old books?
They had been keeping them in the attic.
How long had you been waiting for lunch?
I had been waiting for 30 minutes.
Had the baby been sleeping before you arrived?
Yes, he had been sleeping peacefully.
Why had you been watering the plants?
They had been drying out.
What had she been making in the oven?
She had been making a chocolate cake.
Had your father been watching TV before dinner?
Yes, he had been watching the news.
Where had your mother been going every evening?
She had been going for a walk.
What had you been buying at the mall?
I had been buying clothes.
Why had they been spending so much money?
They had been shopping for gifts.
Had she been looking for a discount?
Yes, she had been looking for a good deal.
Where had he been keeping his savings?
He had been keeping them in the bank.
Had your friend been borrowing money from you?
Yes, he had been borrowing small amounts.
Why had the shop been closing early?
It had been losing customers.
What had they been selling at the market?
They had been selling fresh fruits.
Had the cashier been counting the money correctly?
Yes, she had been counting carefully.
Who had been helping you carry the bags?
A kind stranger had been helping me.
Had it been raining all night?
Yes, it had been raining heavily.
Why had the wind been blowing so strongly?
A storm had been coming.
What had the birds been doing in the garden?
They had been eating seeds.
Where had the animals been drinking water?
They had been drinking from the river.
Had the sun been shining in the morning?
Yes, it had been shining brightly.
Why had the trees been shaking?
The wind had been strong.
How long had the river been flowing so fast?
It had been flowing for 3 days.
Had you been feeling cold in the evening?
Yes, I had been feeling very cold.
What had the farmers been planting?
They had been planting corn.
Why had the grass been looking dry?
There had been no rain.
Had she been feeling sick?
Yes, she had been feeling weak.
Why had you been skipping meals?
I had been feeling full.
How long had he been exercising?
He had been exercising for an hour.
What had the doctor been telling you?
He had been giving me advice.
Had you been taking your medicine?
Yes, I had been taking it on time.
Why had they been visiting the hospital?
Their uncle had been feeling sick.
Where had you been doing yoga?
I had been doing yoga in the park.
Had your mother been resting enough?
No, she had been working too much.
What had she been drinking for her health?
She had been drinking herbal tea.
Why had he been feeling tired?
He had been sleeping late.
Had they been enjoying the party?
Yes, they had been having fun.
Why had you been dancing so much?
I had been enjoying the music.
Who had been playing games with you?
My cousin had been playing with me.
What had the children been doing at the park?
They had been playing on the swings.
Had the neighbors been making noise at night?
Yes, they had been playing loud music.
Where had you been meeting your friends?
We had been meeting at the cafe.
Had he been watching movies all day?
Yes, he had been watching action films.
What had she been doing on her phone?
She had been chatting with her friends.
Why had your brother been laughing so much?
He had been watching funny videos.
Had they been talking about their vacation?
Yes, they had been planning their trip.
What had you been doing before sleeping?
I had been reading a book.
Why had she been waking up early?
She had been going for a morning walk.
Had he been following a diet?
Yes, he had been eating healthy food.
Where had you been going every weekend?
I had been going to the gym.
How long had they been learning yoga?
They had been learning for 3 months.
Why had she been drinking so much water?
She had been feeling thirsty.
Had you been brushing your teeth twice a day?
Yes, I had been taking care of my teeth.
What had he been doing before breakfast?
He had been exercising.
Why had you been sleeping late?
I had been watching movies.
Had he been using his laptop all day?
Yes, he had been working online.
Where had you been saving your files?
I had been saving them on my hard drive.
How long had he been playing video games?
He had been playing for 3 hours.
Had your computer been running slowly?
Yes, it had been lagging a lot.
What had she been watching on YouTube?
She had been watching cooking videos.
Who had been fixing your computer?
My brother had been repairing it.
Where had you been going every morning?
I had been going to my office.
Had the bus been arriving late every day?
Yes, it had been coming late.
Why had she been taking a taxi?
She had been running late.
Had they been traveling by train?
Yes, they had been using the train daily.
What had the driver been doing before the trip?
He had been checking the engine.
Why had the plane been delayed?
The weather had been bad.
Had the tourists been enjoying their trip?
Yes, they had been exploring new places.
What had your family been doing on vacation?
They had been visiting new cities.
Where had she been planning to go?
She had been planning to visit France.
Had you been preparing for the festival?
Yes, I had been decorating my house.
What had she been wearing at the party?
She had been wearing a red dress.
Why had they been dancing so much?
They had been enjoying the music.
Had your friends been singing at the event?
Yes, they had been singing beautifully.
What had you been eating at the wedding?
I had been eating delicious food.
Had he been taking photos at the celebration?
Yes, he had been capturing great moments.
Why had they been lighting fireworks?
They had been celebrating a festival.
Had you been meeting new people at the party?
Yes, I had been making new friends.
Who had been organizing the function?
My uncle had been managing everything.
What had you been doing at the office?
I had been preparing a report.
Had she been attending meetings all day?
Yes, she had been busy in meetings.
Why had he been working late?
He had been finishing an urgent project.
Had you been training new employees?
Yes, I had been teaching them the work.
What had your boss been discussing?
He had been discussing a new project.
Had the company been facing losses?
Yes, it had been struggling for months.
Why had the employees been protesting?
They had been asking for better salaries.
How long had she been handling the team?
She had been leading for 2 years.
Who had been managing the accounts?
The finance manager had been handling them.
Had you been calling your parents every day?
Yes, I had been talking to them daily.
Why had she been avoiding her friend?
She had been feeling upset.
Who had been helping your grandmother?
My sister had been helping her.
Had they been taking care of their pet?
Yes, they had been looking after it well.
How long had she been waiting for her brother?
She had been waiting for an hour.
What had you been doing with your cousins?
We had been playing board games.
Who had been teaching your little sister?
I had been teaching her math.
Had you been studying for the test?
Yes, I had been preparing all week.
What had she been learning in class?
She had been learning about history.
Why had the teacher been repeating the lesson?
The students had not been understanding it.
How long had you been practicing writing?
I had been practicing for 2 hours.
Had the students been doing their homework?
Yes, they had been completing their tasks.
Who had been helping you with your studies?
My friend had been explaining the topics.
What had the professor been discussing?
He had been discussing science experiments.
Why had you been missing school?
I had been feeling unwell.
Where had you been keeping your notes?
I had been keeping them in my bag.
Why had he been visiting the doctor?
He had been suffering from a cold.
What had you been eating for a healthy diet?
I had been eating fruits and vegetables.
Had they been exercising daily?
Yes, they had been following a routine.
Where had you been going for a morning walk?
I had been walking in the park.
How long had she been doing yoga?
She had been practicing for 6 months.
Had the baby been drinking enough milk?
Yes, he had been drinking well.
Why had he been feeling so tired?
He had been working too much.
What had the doctor been advising you?
He had been advising me to rest.
Had you been sleeping well at night?
No, I had been sleeping late.
What had you been cooking for lunch?
I had been making pasta.
Had she been baking a cake?
Yes, she had been baking a chocolate cake.
Why had they been ordering food online?
They had been feeling too lazy to cook.
Where had you been eating dinner?
I had been eating at a restaurant.
How long had she been preparing the meal?
She had been cooking for an hour.
Had the chef been trying a new recipe?
Yes, he had been experimenting with spices.
What had they been drinking in the evening?
They had been drinking coffee.
Had you been learning new cooking skills?
Yes, I had been watching cooking videos.
Why had the soup been tasting so spicy?
I had been adding too many chilies.
Who had been helping you in the kitchen?
My mother had been guiding me.
Had you been watching movies all weekend?
Yes, I had been enjoying them.
What had she been listening to on the radio?
She had been listening to old songs.
Why had they been laughing so much?
They had been watching a comedy show.
Who had been playing the piano?
My friend had been practicing.
Had you been dancing at the party?
Yes, I had been dancing a lot.
Where had they been going for fun?
They had been visiting amusement parks.
Had he been writing a story?
Yes, he had been working on a new book.
What had your brother been drawing?
He had been sketching animals.
Why had she been playing the guitar all night?
She had been practicing for a concert.
How long had you been painting that picture?
I had been painting it for 2 days.